Assignment of permissions inside NAV Easy Security can actually also be used for calculating a lot of reportings. We will have something we call summary permissions, summary calculations that is actually on top of the permissions. We can have multiple requirements for example, being able to post a sales order. We can also report on all the summary data we have, and it can easily be saved as a report that you will run in the future also. You can also summarize data for everything else, so you can do it for permission set, permission groups, live users, and live permission sets also in here. But let's take a look at it. I'm inside the Easy Security company. I will go and assign some permissions to a new user in here. I have the person John, and I will assign permission sets from a group sales in here. This group consists of some of the standard NAV permission sets in here. And again, of course, we can assign them only in a single company. So as I assign these access controls to John, I can now update the login. And one of the things that will be calculated is what is called summary permissions in here. Summary permissions is the total access by table, by company in here. So for example, in Micronos Europe and North America, I have insert, modify, and delete in here. In my vendor ledger entry, I would only have read permission in here. And if I actually wanted to see where this read permission came from, I can use this function assigned from up here to see there's two permission sets assigned inside Micronos Europe company that actually gives access to that table, and I will be able to see what level of access out here also. If I go assign a little more permissions to John in here, I'll actually assign John the operation manager in here. Operation manager is the same as sales, plus purchase warehouse, and the ability to actually do some work in the item journal also in here. I will assign this access only inside my North America company in here. And as I now update my login, I'll see that I got a few more summary permissions, but I really got a lot different summary permissions. In my vendor ledger entry, I now have indirect insert and indirect modify indicated with the lowercase letters out here in the permission string. That will allow me to then go and actually post to the vendor ledger entry. That information again can be seen where it actually comes from, and based on my operation manager group, I had some permissions set assigned in here. One of them being my purchase payable post permission set, giving me the insert, modify, and delete in here. So basically, that's the reason that I could actually post to my vendor ledger entry in here. These summary permissions is calculated based on everything, and I can also look the other way around, where I kind of navigate, look for the vendor ledger entry, and I'll see what places it's used in the system. I can see there's 717 permission sets that actually assign access to that one. I'll be able to see the level of access and also be able to filter, for example. So if I wanted to see who could actually do an insert in that table, I could go ahead and say I actually wanted to see who has insert permission with a minimum of either direct or indirect access in here. So these one are all the permission sets that I would be looking for if I was going to assign somebody the access to insert into my vendor ledger entry in here. There's a lot more useful information on this where used. We can also see all the relations. That's a scanning of the source code analysis. And based on my vendor ledger entry, I have a lot of table relation and other things out here. The other thing is looking the other way, and that's maybe more useful, and seeing where is my vendor ledger actually used and what is it used for in here. I'll both be able to see permissions flow fields, table relations, and many other things in here. For example, showing a list of all reports or pages that is showing that table as the source table out here. Being able to filter kind of for important data is actually allowing me both to control quick security quite easily in here, but also control the other object level information. So the relations is an essential part for finding these important objects in here. But summary permissions is really only the first part of this one, because one summary permission, like in my case here for the vendor ledger entry to insert, that's maybe enough permissions for doing a portion of that one. But there's more needed to be able to actually, for example, create a journal line and be posting it in here. You would need access to the journal line, and you would also need access to the proper code units that would be used for posting and the pages where you would type it in. And that's exactly what is called a summary result out here, or based on a summary calculation. If I take a look at these summary results, I will see for my user John, we calculated abilities for all companies and for individual companies. And the one that have access complete basically means John is able to do that 100%. So for example, posting a journal in here for the vendor, I would only have 60% of it. And if I actually view this, it will tell me the pieces that I need in here, and I need really two things in here, to my GL entries and to my vendor ledger entry and my journal line. I need to be able to delete it. So these abilities can be used quite easily, and you'll be able to actually have this kind of information shown out here also. So if I go to the setup and create a new summary calculation in here, I could have one that actually was an ability to be able to open the chart of account, for example. So I'll open chart of account. First of all, I would need read access to my GL accounts, of course, because that's where the information is. But I would also need read permission for my GL entries to calculate the flow fields. I will say I need read access to my GL account, and I would also need read access to my GL entries. Using standard NAV basic and how security is assigned, objects are assigned to all users, all objects to all users. But you really need at least one thing more if you look at it. And maybe you have all objects, but you need for sure to be able to also use the chart of account in here. And you can see there is a comment in here that the object property for page 16 has actually been inserted in here. All this one is controlled by object properties, and I will show that at the end which one actually are being added in here. But with this one, I now have set up a new calculation of an ability. I want to make that active, so I'll go ahead and put a checkbox in the calculate one up here. If I now go back and take a look at John, for example, in here, and I will update the login, I will see out here that I now have the ability to open the chart of account in here also. And this fact box is a little small, but you can actually extend it a little, and then it will make a little more sense showing the individual companies and things like that one in here. Taking a look at those object properties, there is a few things that control what is actually showing up in summary permission. As I was updating my login, it all updated automatically. And that's because in this field, I didn't have a manual update of summary permissions. It is an option to do a manual update of summary permission if this calculation is becoming time-consuming during a publish. It's also possible to have summary permissions for everything. So if I check this one without the manual, and I will go back to John and update, I will see I will actually get thousands of summary permissions. And that's really because now everything in here is being generated summary permissions for, not just the few tables I decided in here. We don't recommend using that one because with a fair amount of users, it could actually be quite time-consuming. But you can always use that with the ability also to say, I want to only do it manually. And then as I updated a login, we won't be calculating all that information. You can also control this one. And with the object properties, we can go in and select either by checking the segregation of duty, or if the table is a limited license, or we do object level security, or the quick security type is different from full access in here. At that point, we will add them to the summary permissions automatically. So let's say that I actually wanted to have information about people's access to the location table. I can go put a check mark in the segregation of duties in here. And in that way, I would know who actually or what access people will have to the location table. So with this check mark added, if I go back to John, and before I update, I would see I don't have, or I actually have my table 14 in here because I just checked everything. But if I update the login, I will have my location table being added in here. So at this point, that's one of the tables I really want to know something about, and I can see I have an indirect insert that really indirect is only a half permission, and it's mainly about all the posted tables where the other half being assigned from code is important in here. This one is based on some of the standard NAV permission sets. I can see in here that I actually have the ability to print checks, and that's kind of a little interesting because I really only assigned John the ability to work with some of the sales transaction. But the permissions combined gives the ability to print checks in here. If I want to take a look the other way at it, saying now I have looked at a single person, but I actually also have permission groups, and you can have summary results out of here also. So if I went to the sales group and updated my summary permissions, it will calculate this one. It don't happen automatically because it's even more time consuming potentially than calculating it for a user in here. But in this way, I can have exactly the same level of permission. Of course, the company level don't make sense because you will assign the company when you assign it to a login. We can also have all these summary permissions being calculated for the permission sets. Same way in here, being able to actually calculate summary permissions for my permission sets also in here. I'll actually have to do it a little different because the groups make sense for a single permission set, not necessarily in here. We can look at summary permissions for everything in here. And now I'm looking for every user, and I maybe want to be interested in what people's access are to my vendor ledger entry, for example. So I will go into my data, and I will say that table 25, that was my vendor ledger entry. I'm now looking at everybody's access based on the companies and also the access they will have out there. We right now only have users in here. We can update summary permission across everything. It's not happening again automatically. It's something that you do when you need it. But let's say I want this for permission sets, groups, recordings, and we can also do it for the live users out here. So if I update my permission set, I now get the data calculated for everything else in here. And as you'll see, it takes a little while to calculate. It's a complex calculation to do all these things. At the same time I update summary permission, we will actually also update the summary results. That is that calculation based on all the multiple tables and multiple objects for having access to certain things in here. If you want to do reporting, you probably want to deal with the live users, because most auditors would really like to know what is the total permission a user has in the system, and not necessarily based on something inside Easy Security. So the live calculation can be quite important for that purpose in there. But if I now look at it, we have for users, permission groups, permission sets, and recordings, and even down to all the live users by company and the level of access they have in there. So it's really easy to find all that information. The same way as we have things for the summary permissions, we also have for the summary results. And all this one has now been calculated when I ran that process before. So I'll be able to see out here, as I actually go down to the bottom, I should see what we call live users down here. So I will know the abilities of the live users. And again, as before, I can see how much of that information. So I can see Susan in Europe posting to the bank. She only have 80% of what is needed in here. And if I view that, I can see that, yeah, there's access to GL entries, but there's not a delete on the journal line. And that's basically what preventing Susan from posting to the bank ledger entry. All the other is perfectly okay, but there's missing the delete in here. Figuring out this one requires some knowledge of the code underneath, but it's actually one of the things that we deliver quite a lot of these calculations in here. You can see things about posting to bank, purchasing, posting, sales posting. All these ones are good to look at, and then you can actually easily go copy or make something similar in here. If I wanted to do a report about this one, I'd say I really want to know about my live users. All these other things, my auditors don't care about it. I want to know everything where people have an access complete, so basically where everything is set up in here, or a user have full access. And I want to know about the ability in here, or the summary calculation code. And I can pick a single one of them in here, who can actually post to the bank, for example. So now I have a list of my live users based on who actually, I'll just sort them here by the username. I guess it won't, because it's a flow field. But anyway, I can see which user have access to posting to bank in here. Tim in all companies, David in a few companies, the user myself in all, and also Michael in some companies. One of the real nice things about this one is you can actually now go and save this view. So I will create this one. I'll create a view here that is called live users that can post bank. And as of now, a restart, I'll be able to see under my summary results kind of my report in here. So basically this report, I'll do it once, but then after that I have saved it and can run it again. And I can send this one to Excel. And in that way, I have a report that somebody that want to audit this, I can make these abilities and I can easily report on it. And when it comes back 3 months later, I really don't have to do anything. I will go update my summary permissions, and then I will be able to print this report again in here. quite easy to maintain going forward. But the summary permissions and the summary results being the more complex way of having this makes it quite a lot easier to do reporting and also get an overview of the changes as you make them to a user or what a person can actually do in the system. So as I showed here, we can have summary permissions set up based on the object properties for anything. The summary calculations will allow you to define more complex requirements, saying I need both this access and I would need something else. All the reporting can easily be done simply by saving these views and in the future go update. And as I showed, we can do this for the live users if we want to also out there.